So I'm going to be talking about integrating Apache Solr with content management systems. It's going to be, we did make our experiences with a content management system called Typo3, but I think it's going to be the issues we ran into are applicable to any other content management system very likely, and probably also other applications in general. So about Infield design, maybe that should have been the next slide. Anyway, who are we? We are a small company in San Francisco. We do strategy planning, design, user experience, in general, websites, application development. And with this guy in front of you, my name is Ingo Renner. I'm a committer on the Typo3 CMS, release manager, committer at Apache Ticker, and just moved to San Francisco end of last year, like snowboarding, mountain biking, hoping to get into surfing, and I work as a software engineer and architect at Infield Design. So let's get on to Typo3, so you maybe can understand easier what this is all about. It's a free and open source enterprise content management system. We have about over 500,000 installations worldwide. There are over 6,000 publicly available extensions, plus of course a lot more that have been built by all the agencies that are using Typo3. And there's probably more than 6 million downloads. It's a content management framework. You can do multi-site installations, multi-languages, versioning, workflow, all the stuff that you want to have if you're doing websites for companies, enterprises, stuff like that. And that's also why it's been so popular, especially in Europe, German-speaking markets, but we are also coming over here slowly, but we will. Stable, secure, scalable, all the things you need. And a bit about the Typo3 community. The development of Typo3 is completely community-driven. There's no single company behind that, so it's a true open source project. We have conferences in North America, Europe, Asia. The North American conference is coming up end of May in San Francisco. And I'm going to share a discount code for the tickets at the end of the presentation. There's bar camps, developer days, and a famous snowboard tour. Everybody likes to go there. And we've been in Google Summer of Code 4 times, fourth time this year, backed by the Typo3 Association. And there are some more projects under the Typo3 brand. So, but let's go on to the Solr and CMS integration. What challenges did we face, and what solutions did we find to these challenges? So first of all, with a good CMS, you want to have flexible page rendering. But Typo3 does have that. But this is also what it makes difficult at some point. So in the community, there have been different templating engines. One that comes with the core, of course, that we needed to support. But there are also alternative templating engines provided by the community. Some were more popular, some less. And of course, we wanted to support the popular ones too, at least. So it's not easy to just go and say, OK, get me all the content for a particular page by, let's say, select star from content where page ID equals whatever. It doesn't work because the templating is just too flexible to do it this way. You could have content on a page coming from another page. You could have a completely the complete set of the content elements taken from a different page. You could generate content dynamically. You could have elements on a page that are reused on all the pages. So it's kind of a bit hard to find out what's the relevant content that you actually want to index. So of course, then it's just like I said, common elements on a page. That also means the navigation menu. You probably don't want to have that in your index because it's always going to be the same terms and it's going to mess up your data. And then, just like I said, there's content generated by plugins. Let's say you have a news plugin that has a list view, an archive view, a single view of a page. And the way it works with Typo3 is you have usually you have a folder where you store the news records, and then you place a news plugin on a page, target that to the folder where your news are stored, and then you tell it to either list the news in a list view or have a single view or archive or whatever. So the problem with that is you know where the news are stored, but you will it's going to be hard to find out where it's going to be displayed. So that's difficult to do. So what did we do to address these things? We came up with the idea of an index queue. That means whenever something changes in Typo3, changed by an editor or through an API, there's a central we call it the Typo3 core engine. That's where all the changes have to go through. This is that was pretty helpful for us because we could go and implement a record monitor that would listen on all the changes, and you can configure what types of content to track, and you just watch out. Hey, this is a news coming by that has been changed. This is a regular text content element that has changed. So whenever something comes by that you need to track, you add it to the index queue, and then you have a what we call the scheduler, basically cron that works the index queue, sees, okay, this is this is a page that needs to be indexed, this is a news that needs to be indexed, and so we have a specialized indexer for pages and a more general purpose indexer for the regular records like news, FAQ, whatever you want. And so then, depending on what's in the index queue, it's going to be worked by the specific indexers. So to address the issue with the flexible templating engine, and like I said, we can't figure out easily what content is going to be shown on a certain page. We simply had to back up to just crawl the pages. But at least we know which pages changed. So we really just need to do an initial indexing run, and then from there on, it's just data indexing. And then we still have the problem of content on pages that might be reused on different pages, or that are common elements like the navigation. We just work around that by wrapping our relevant content by markers. So it's just hidden comments in the markup that say, okay, this is where the content starts, and that is where it ends. And you can use multiple of these area markers on one page. And then that allows us easily to find out, okay, we need to just take this bit of content. And then I also said we don't know where content is going to show up if it's used by plugins like news. We simply exclude those pages from indexing, from crawling. And for those, we have a simple mapping where you configure on the left side, you have the name of your field in the index document. On the right side, you have the instructions for the indexer, how to fill that field for that document. So for the title field in the document, you want to have probably the title field from the news record, or a special treatment for categories and stuff like that. So it's very easy to customize that for your custom plugin content records. You just create a map of that configuration, and then the indexer will do the rest for that. Next challenge for us was dealing with access rights. So obviously, with a content management system that is used in intranets and extranets, you don't want everybody to see everything. And since we had to deal with a flexible system of user groups and user permissions, there was an issue. There used to be, or there still is, a built-in indexing or search engine that could deal with that, but all the other third-party plugins after that couldn't really deal with that. So, but we saw this as a challenge and accepted that challenge to be solved. And of course, you could do like assign permissions to a certain page and then extend it down to all its subpages. That also needed to be taken care of. So to overcome that, we simply went to build a custom Solr access filter plugin. We first had the idea of maybe doing a weird combination of filter queries, but that turned out to be very difficult. And at the end, we were like, okay, the only way to do that is really to create a plugin for Solr. And the way it works is we have a plugin that registers a query parser, and that can then be used in a regular filter. And the cool way by doing that is, since it's just a regular filter in Solr, it's very performant because all the filters are cached, basically. And then the way we do the matching is we simply store the user group IDs that are allowed to see a certain document. We store that in the document itself. And then when a user is conducting a search query, we know what user that is, obviously. Also, even if it's just an anonymous user that is not logged in, we just assume a user group ID of 0. And then we can submit all his user group IDs with the query, and then the plugin will do the matching. And then, of course, all the documents that do not match that that association of user groups in the document with the users groups will not be shown. Next challenge for us was file indexing. The things we had to deal with was like, okay, we could easily identify links in a web page. That's not hard, but is that a file link? Is it a link to a file to some external website, or is it within the website itself? And is it in the system? That was still doable, but then back then when we started implementing our extension for the CMS, it's like there was no centralized API of dealing with files. So the core did it one way, basically the good way, but then there were other third-party plugins that basically did whatever they wanted. And of course, some of them became popular, so we had to deal with that too. And then even after we identified the files that needed to be indexed, we also needed to track those, like were there links removed to them, were new links added, deal with duplication, linking to the same file in multiple locations and stuff like that. And of course, how do you read the content of the file. Like if you link to a PDF, a Word document, Excel sheet, whatever, even sometimes you want to index images, videos. How do you read the content of those files? And then before that, we actually had a solution where we had multiple tools for different file formats. So there was a tool to read Word documents, another tool to read PDF files, but obviously that doesn't scale very well. So the way we solved that is we put in some abstraction where we called them the file detectors. So there was file detectors that we shipped with the extension that could obviously detect files that have been linked by core content elements, and then some file detectors for other popular extensions. And those file detectors knew or do know about the internals of those third-party plugins, and so we can find their links. Or sometimes the plugins are still weird, and but then they at least provide some kind of API or hooks to hook into the plugin when they are generating the page content, and we are able to do to find the files through that way. And then we are just putting them into a separate index queue, so we don't have to interfere with the content indexing versus the file indexing. We can give them different priorities, and yeah, basically like that. And in newer versions of Typo3, there was a file system abstraction layer introduced that really helped us to make progress on tracking the files. Now we can go in and say, okay, this is a file link to a certain file, and if there's another link on another page to the same file, we will know now. So because now we are not dealing with files anymore, but we are dealing with records that are representing that file. So that helped a lot. And I said we had an issue with reading the actual file content. How did we do that? And this is basically where Apache Ticker comes into play. It's really cool. It knows about 1,200 file formats, so it can identify them, and half of them can be read. So Apache Ticker basically is a collection of file parsers, and it can deal with basically all the file formats you will come across in your daily life. The Microsoft formats, the old ones, the new ones, PDFs, and then for images, you can get the metadata out of images or out of videos. So it's very flexible. So that's what Apache Ticker does. Content and metadata extraction, and language detection is an added bonus kind of. So you can pass Apache Ticker some piece of content, and it'll know, or it'll try to guess at least very relatively reliable what language that piece of text is. And then, of course, there was the REST. So Typo3 is a PHP-based content management system, and the Solr world is a Java world. And obviously, that doesn't go well together, most of the time at least. And so we had to take some measures to make it easy for PHP people to set up a Tomcat and Solr and configure everything. And in the end, we wanted to have everything as easy as possible for everybody. And talking to Solr needed to be solved some way. And of course, we made mistakes when we started with that. I mean, everybody starts somewhere. And the way we solved that is basically, for the PHP people, we just created a simple, easy-to-run bash install script. It now goes, fetches the latest version of Tomcat, fetches the latest version that we can use right now, and installs everything, puts everything in the right place, downloads our access filter plugin, downloads configuration files, and it's easy. You just execute the script, and after that you have a running Tomcat with Solr, and you're ready to go, basically. To talk to Solr, we are using Solr PHP client. That's a PHP library. I mean, it's relatively old now, but I would still recommend it. There have been newer PHP solutions to talk to Solr, like even a PHP module, but I would still go with that library. I think it's just good code, easy to use, works. And then, so some mistakes we made that you probably don't need to make anymore if I tell you is, one of our first projects was a site where we had English and German content, and so we were indexing that into the same index. That works relatively well with German and English because the languages are not that far apart. There's some common things in there, but so fortunately that worked out very well, but fortunately we never had to add any language like French or Russian to the same site, because then I think it would have not worked that well. And that was our first learning, kind of, for example, you really should separate your languages in different indexes. So then you can take advantage of doing customized analysis of English versus German versus French. There's a different approach. Magento uses that, for example, where you have German fields and English fields and French fields all in one index, and you just add a _DE for German fields to the field name, something like that. But personally, I prefer the way to just separate languages by index or by core, and then you just switch the core depending on what language you're on. I think that's easier to do. So what do we have right now? We have faceted search, of course, file indexing, multi-language and multi-site handling. Did you mean more like this? There's also one feature where we are mimicking the Google way, where you type in something incorrectly, but you get the results already for the thing we think you really meant. Like, did you mean X, Y, Z? And we are presenting you the results for X, Y, Z already instead of X, Y. Search word highlighting, that's nice. Of course, that works in the search results list, but with the CMS, it's easy to also carry over the highlighting to the eventual result that you choose to go to. And autocomplete, like I said, access rights support, and a lot of stuff more. And eventually, some case studies or demos, basically. So this is the project side where we had a demo use case indexing the Type+3 mailing lists, a couple of them at least. And so that helped a lot to get the project going. And this is SEB, a Swedish bank. That was a pretty good project. They were always interested in using latest technology and stuff. They had some interesting layout, how they wanted to have the search results presented. And they also were the first ones to go with something like that tag cloud for commonly searched terms. So that was nice to drive forward the flexibility of the templating engine. Lufthansa is using it. That was also one of the first projects we did with that integration. And the nice thing here is a detail. So we searched for stewardess, but that's actually not the term Lufthansa uses, because the correct term would be flight attendant. And so we're using just synonyms here to work around it, because most of the times people will search for stewardesses. But we also used the extension in different ways, because it was so flexible. We didn't really, sometimes we use it in completely different ways. For example, so Sartorius, they are a provider for chemical appliances, stuff like that. And a lot of parts of that complete site are driven by Solr, although there's no search visible. So we have lists of products that you can filter, you can sort, and we use facets for that, or sorting, or other stuff like that. So another use case where we didn't use Solr solely for searching, but also rapid application development, basically. So here, this is they're making these tractors and stuff, and they are using Solr to present downloads and media files, and then you can just work through different filters until you find what you're looking for. Okay, that's it.